the benefits of having a college degree are really about having a college degree versus about having a degree from a specific college.
Welcome to Talking About Kids. I'm your host, R. Bradley Snyder, researcher, activist, and author of The 5 Simple Truths of Raising Kids. If you are a parent or you work with parents, then you know that the topic of paying for college can be unpleasant, which is why I'm so glad that I was introduced to Ann Garcia. Her book, aptly named How to Pay for College, is practical, powerful, and easy to read and implement. More importantly, her approach is focused on the belief and the data that there is a college that fits your budget, your values, and, most importantly, your kid. This podcast was sponsored in part by the Arizona Department of Health Services Must Stop Bullying campaign through its Title V Maternal and Child Health Program. For more information, go to muststopbullying.org. And now, the interview.
As a financial planner, I found that I was talking with a lot of two groups of people. One was parents who would come into the practice really with a lot of questions about how to pay for college, and all of our training and all of our content and materials were about how to pay for retirement. And I thought, that doesn't really make sense that we can't address this question, which for many families is their second largest expense in their lifetime, educating their children. Many people will spend more on that than they spend on their house. There was a second group of people I was talking with a lot, and those were young adults who, because of their student loan debt, were struggling to start with the basics of adult life, saving for retirement, maybe buying a house, in some cases even having an emergency savings account. And again, because of their student loan debt, I sort of felt like if I could help that first group, which was the parents who were trying to figure out how to pay for college, we might wind up with less of that second group. And, at the same time, I'm a parent. And when I was having these conversations with other parents, my kids were in middle school and looking, we were as a family starting to look in a lot greater detail about what college was going to cost us. And that was leading to some eye-opening conversations around the dinner table as well. And so I felt like this was a problem that my family faced, and it was a problem that a lot of other people faced. And if I could, again, start helping to provide answers to those questions. What we see a lot of with people with student loan debts is that education has closed doors for them, and really education is about opening doors and creating a future.
In your book, you point out that it's kind of a cliche in your field when you're asked, when should I start saving, to answer yesterday. But that's not how your book proceeds, really. You start talking about really how to prepare. And you start by directing the reader to address kind of college values and priorities. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, with college, we get so caught up on the money and the names in college that we stop thinking about why we're actually trying to educate our children in the first place. And that's where you get into these situations where families commit far too many resources to college in pursuit of, maybe it's a specific degree from a specific college versus that opportunity to create the kind of adulthood that you want for your kids. And I think we get so caught up in what's that image of them at 18, stepping into that ivy covered courtyard, versus that image of them at 25, pursuing a career or thinking about graduate school, or maybe meeting the person they're going to marry, and starting that adult life. And if we think about why we're educating our kids, then I think that leads to a richer range of choices versus, I want my kid to go to an Ivy League, or I want my kid to stay in state, or I want my kid to go to my alma
Right.
mater. Education is really a values exercise, and I know as a financial planner, it's easy for me to talk about the money and talk about if you contribute $350 every month from birth to 18, you'll have the cost of 4 years of public in-state college at full price covered. But planning for college is equal parts financial planning and parenting. And it's really the parenting aspect of it that I think gets short shrift, and that's where when we're not having those
Hmm.
conversations about what we're trying to accomplish and what resources we're willing to direct at that goal, that's when the kid starts to take
Right.
the lead in that process, and more importantly, the kid's friends and older siblings start to take the lead, and you as a parent are playing catch up, trying to corral those choices into something that works for your family, or trying to corral your family's finances or
Right.
uncorral your family's finances in a way that supports an objective that really you shouldn't be.
And you present a mantra in your book that has to do with deciding which college. And I'll repeat it for listeners here. It says, you say, repeat to yourself many times, spending more on college does not guarantee a better outcome. Spending less doesn't risk a worse outcome. And you present some pretty interesting research about that. Why should that be a mantra?
Well, because whatever your budget, whatever your resources for college, you will find, and your student will find good
Mm,
choices. Um, it's where we as parents say it's really important for me that my child go to X, Y, or Z named college. That we get into big financial trouble, and frankly, the stakes in paying for college are just too high to give your child every choice. There is no other major purchase that we make that cost doesn't inform that decision.
right.
When we buy a house, we have a budget. When we buy a car, we have a budget. When my clients come in to talk about retirement, if they have limited means, I don't talk about buying villas in Italy. College needs to be the same way, and we need to release that parental guilt around not being able to
Right.
provide every option for our child. There is so much data, not just on the financial side. It's really easy to say, yeah, earnings are about $1 million higher lifetime earnings for college graduates
Right.
than those without it. The unemployment rate is usually half what it is for college graduates than for non. The unemployment rate for college graduates is usually half what it is for those without a degree. There are so many non-financial benefits.
Hmm.
College graduates have less type 2 diabetes and heart disease. They live longer lives. They're more likely to marry and less likely to divorce. So those are all things that you're right to want for your
Right.
child. But those are all benefits that are available to all
Well,
college
and
degree
that's the
holders as
interesting part because I think that people who listen to this podcast regularly will know that I've addressed this before, but it's interesting coming from you as a financial planner that one would think, well, if there are these benefits of attending college, then obviously paying more for college is going to yield greater benefits. But you and I know that's not the case. In fact, you put in some analysis about the where the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies went to school.
Yeah, the top school for producing Fortune 500 CEOs is Texas A&M. Now, granted, Texas A&M graduates a lot more students than most other
Right.
than most other colleges, but the benefits of having a college degree are really about having a college degree versus about having a degree from a specific college. In my family, I have twins. They will graduate from college this year. One is at a highly selective, less than 10% of applicants are admitted college, and the other is at a public college that admits more than three-quarters of applicants.
Right.
And they both have practically identical jobs coming out of college. So, we're a focus group of two,
Right.
and there's certainly lots of room for data variance, but the one who's at the less
Right.
selective school chose a school where he feels successful, where he's spread his wings, where he has found mentors, he's engaged in activities, and he's built up a network.
Yeah.
and created opportunities for himself that come from the fact that he chose a school that's a good fit for
Right.
him.
And that's so important. And I know that today we're talking about paying for college, but I've talked about this even with grade school and high school. The right school is the one where your child does best, where they feel safe
Hmm.
and supported and are able to thrive. And you point out that the downside of being at the wrong college, I believe you listed this as really the worst thing that could happen financially in this whole process is, picking the wrong school and then coming out without a degree but debt.
So students who graduate do not have, as a cohort,
Right.
do not have difficulty paying off those student loans. Those who don't get the degree often do. The other downside with picking a college that's not a fit for you is oftentimes that results in you transferring. And when you transfer, a couple things happen. One is oftentimes your credits don't transfer with
Mm.
you. Or if they do transfer, they transfer as gen ed credits, not credits towards your major. And it's very common that college then takes 5 years or 6 years, which is astronomically more
Hmm.
money than a 4 year degree. And the other thing that happens is transfer students aren't eligible for as many scholarships as our incoming freshmen. So you could lose out on financial aid and scholarship opportunities, and basically end up spending a whole lot more money to get a degree than you might have set out for. So finding that good fit,
Right.
school where you will feel challenged, but where you'll also have an opportunity to succeed is a great opportunity. I mean, my son is a classic example of that. He was not a good student in high school, and I think it was largely because we bought into that whole better, faster, stronger
Mm.
mentality of, take the hardest classes that you can. You're a smart kid. You should be in IB classes. And he really struggled in those classes in high school. Wasn't a good student. Not only, there was the downside of he didn't have a good GPA and, was not eligible for scholarships that he would have been
Right.
eligible for had we not pushed him into those classes. But there were the regular evenings of him, crying in his bedroom over his homework and saying, I'm the dumbest person of all my friends, and just having that sense of he was not a good student. And now he's a straight A student in
Mm.
college. He got a D in calculus in high school. He's a statistics tutor in
Right.
in college. He was invited to the honors college after freshman year.
Amazing. Right.
um, and partly that's because he's found a great fit for
The right
himself.
environment. Absolutely. Uh, I think that um, a lot of us are intimidated or ashamed that we didn't start earlier saving for college. That just as you said, like we all kind of know that if we had started, went from the hospital and opened up the plan, that we'd be in better shape. Um, but you put the reader at ease by pointing out that even though you're a financial planner, your own savings plan, kind of the word you used was meandered. And that's okay. That's life.
Yeah, I mean, life isn't
Right.
linear, especially for families. Life is lumpy, life is
Yeah.
lifey, as as the saying goes. And college is not always, nor should it ever usually be a family's top financial priority. You need to balance saving for college with all
Right.
of the other things that you do, including living in the present. But I think it's important for families to reflect on their family values when they're thinking
Hmm.
about college. We have some good friends who, their focus for a lot of their family dollars is taking a really nice family
Right.
vacation every year. And that's not necessarily, high-end
Right.
resorts or anything, but that's an important element of being a member of that family is the time that they
Right.
spend together, separate from jobs and school where they have time to focus on one another. The end result of that is there's less dollars available to pay for
Right.
college. And that's okay
Right.
because that's their value and they're okay with it, and they know that that's going to guide their kids' choices when it comes to college. Um,
And in your book, as I mentioned, you lay out from the beginning, that to start asking these questions about what are your values and priorities with regards to college. And one of the things that I like about your book is that you have those worksheets there that people can actually just fill that out. You present those worksheets to sit down as a family and go over, well, what do we value? What is important to us? What defines us? And what do we want out of these next steps? But after those values are established, after those priorities are explicit, at some point we need to start putting money into accounts somewhere. And of all of the things to be thinking about, what's probably the first step or the first vehicle that people should be looking at?
Yeah, I think for the vast majority of families, the best savings vehicle for college is a 529. So 529 is a tax-advantaged college savings plan. They are offered by states primarily. There are a few private entities that offer them as well. For most families, your state's plan is your best choice. States often offer a tax benefit for contributions. Which can add to your savings dollars over time, especially if you're late getting started. You want to find all the free money that you
Right.
can, and your state tax deduction is a good source of additional dollars. The nice thing about 529s, well, there are many nice things about 529s. When you're getting started, one of the really nice things about them is that the initial contribution amount is usually quite small. So you could set up a monthly contribution of $25, for example. And that's a great way to get started. And over time, your financial situation will change. If you were to start this as a newborn, you're probably adding cost of childcare. Maybe one parent is reducing their work hours. You've got someone in your house now who goes through diapers and food and outgrows all their stuff every 3 weeks. So your cost structure is different as a family with young kids. And if you are able to set up a 529 with even a really minimal monthly contribution, give yourself a pat on the back. That's fantastic. You are students whose families have saved for college in any amount enroll and graduate from college at higher rates than those without. So anything you do at this point creates positive outcomes. Not only that, but if you start young, of course, your money has more time to compound and grow. So 529s, easy to set up. The investment choices are really easy. Typically it's like your 401k where there are various mutual funds to choose from, and then 529 plans have the equivalent of retirement plans target date funds. Those are either age-based or target enrollment funds, where the funds will be reallocated annually on the basis of an appropriate risk profile given the time that you have to college. So for young kids, they're much more heavily invested in stocks. For older kids, they're much more heavily invested in bonds so that you don't risk loss of principal as long as it's not 2022. Where kind of the whole market was terrible. The other nice thing about 529s is that when you take the money out and spend it on college, there's no tax on the growth in your account. So you end up having a lot more money available to pay for college than you would if you had it in a taxable investment account where you're paying capital gains or income taxes
Right.
on the growth in the account. The other thing with 529s, and this is kind of the secret sauce of them, is because those distributions are tax free, they don't flow through to your tax return at all. And so when you file the financial aid forms, you haven't added to your income by taking that growth out of the account the way that it would, again, if you were in a taxable investment
Which I
account.
thought was such a smart thing that you pointed out, right? That you're going to be actually bringing down your taxable income and looking better on the financial aid forms by having the money in those 529s. Is there a downside to the 529s that we should be aware of?
Well, they are a college savings account as opposed to an
Right.
anything else savings account. There's a new provision that just came out in the Secure 2.0 Act that allows you to take surplus 529 funds and roll them tax-free into a Roth IRA. There's a little bit of confusion about whether parents can change themselves to the beneficiary or not. Of course, with a 529, if you don't go to college, you don't have the college expense to use it on, and it would be a non-qualified distribution to take it out, in which case the earnings in the account is subject to taxes and a 10% penalty. They're quite flexible though, and there are a lot of things besides just for your colleges that you can spend them on, including a lot of families aren't aware you can use them for off-campus room and board while your student is attending college, but you can use them for community colleges, you can use them for trade schools, apprenticeship programs. You can change the beneficiary. So if you have a couple of kids and one doesn't go to college, you can use the money for the other one. You can also, save it for a grandchild.
Something else that you think you should start early is involving your kids in an understanding of these issues, of picking the college, not just picking it, but understanding the consequences of one school over another and the costs associated with that. How do you get kids, you use the word agency, how do you give kids agency in this process?
Yeah. Well, and I do think it's really important for kids to take to have
Hmm.
agency, the ability to make their own decisions about this within a set of parameters that are established between the parents and the kids. They're the one who has to go to
Hmm.
college and has to, spend 4 years there getting their degree. And so to just tell your kid, here's where you can go, you might be jeopardizing that goal overall. I think it's important to be age appropriate in talking with kids about
Hmm.
college. So, with young kids, I think it's great to just introduce the concept of college as something that has enriched your life. And I call those sort of college adjacent conversations. Maybe you take them to a sports event at a local college. Maybe you talk about friends you made in college. We were out walking one time and a thunderstorm started, and I was with a friend, and she said, gosh, I never knew where thunderstorms came from until I took a meteorology class in college, and I learned about how weather phenomena. So, doing those things with young kids that just introduce the concept of college as something that's
Hmm.
interesting and that you want them to think about is great. Once kids get to more like middle school, where they start having some sense, of how money works, how savings works, how spending works, I think it's appropriate to start talking about concepts of money. And one of the things that I think is really important for parents to do is to talk about the fact that you have saved
Mm.
for college and you are intending to support your child in their college journey to whatever degree it is.
Right.
Um, but give yourself some credit for the hard work that you've done and that you are doing to pay for college, because it's so easy to look out there and be like, we can afford
Right.
this, and it looks like college costs $82,000 a year, and we can't afford that. Think of your strengths as opposed to your weaknesses. There's probably houses out there that cost more than you can afford as well, and cars and all sorts of things like that. When your kids are in middle school, you'll often find, they might have friends who have older siblings who are
Right.
going off to college, where you might have an opportunity to start talking about different types of colleges. But really, by the time, when your student gets to high school, that's a great time to start really talking nuts and bolts about what college costs. I think having those conversations from the perspective of goals
Hmm.
rather than constraints is a better way to give your student some agency in that process. So, for example, we have saved enough that we could get you through our in-state public schools without any student debt. And it's really important to us that you graduate without
Right.
debt. You can probably find options that work for that budget that are other
Hmm.
than our in-state public schools, and we will happily support you in that search and on that
Well,
journey.
and you talk about wanting to make that apples to apples comparison. And there's a couple ways to do that. And again, you provide a worksheet to help somebody when they get, let's if they're in the fortunate position that they get a couple of acceptance letters and they have a couple of financial packages in front of them, making sure that these line up so you know exactly what you're comparing. Are these really going to cost the same? So you provide tips for doing that and worksheets for doing that. But then you also say, going back to priorities, well, we can afford this school, but then can we afford this school and a year abroad, which was something maybe that was a priority for you. So these priorities keep coming up again. It's not just can we afford it or not? It's how much of what can we afford?
Yeah, and college often ends up costing a lot more than we think it's going to cost, and even costing different amounts than what's in your acceptance letter and your aid package. So it is important to think up front about what are all the things that are part of the college package. For example, my husband went to University of Michigan. It was a big school. He was in a fraternity. And that was really a great part of his college life. That was how he engaged on campus. That was how he found a community. And for many parents, that is an important part of their college life. Study abroad, similarly, can be really important. These are all costs that need to be part of your college budget and part of how you consider college. If you are right now looking at acceptance letters and wondering about that, one of the best tools for us was joining the Facebook parents pages of the colleges that our students had been accepted to, and just asking parents there sort of what were the extra budget items that we should be looking at. And they are varying levels of helpful, right. Those groups, but you are actually talking to real people who are part of that. If you're just looking at a college, a great thing to do is have them put you in touch with some current students, whether it's a tour guide for a campus tour, or if you're looking at somewhere far away, oftentimes they'll connect you with current students who are from your area, and they can help you understand, what does it cost to travel back and forth? Do all the parents come to Parents' Weekend? And that's an added expense to consider. The other thing, with aid awards is what's in it and what's not in it. So, for example, my daughter's college includes the cost of health insurance in their award, in their costs. Now, if you have existing health insurance, you just waive the coverage, and voila, college is $5,000 a year cheaper than it looked like. But my son applied to 2 colleges, was accepted to both, and it looked like one cost $7,000 a year more than the other. One of the things we discovered was that one was quoting the most expensive housing and meal plan, the other was quoting the least expensive housing and meal plan. And so actually they were much closer in cost than they seemed. And a lot of it is just how colleges package it. My daughter's college says books cost $3,000 a year. My sons say they cost $800 a year. They don't actually cost either of those numbers. And, that's going to be driven more by what your major is than what it says in the award letter. If you're studying lab sciences or anything with a lot of textbooks, you're going to pay a lot for books.
And you recognized this before I did, that we were going to run out of time before we ran out of things to talk about. But I want to say a couple things very quickly here. In the beginning of your book, you say that it's a guidebook. It's called How to Pay for College, and you can use these sections that apply to you. But I'm going to encourage all my listeners, read every section, because you will find there are things that apply to you that you didn't think would apply to you. And it reads so very, very well. It's not just smart and practical, Ann, but it's a good read. So thank you so much for writing this book. It's one of the best on this topic, if not the best that I've encountered.
Oh, thank you so much for your kind words.
That was Ann Garcia. For more information about Ann and her wonderful book, which I highly, highly recommend, please visit talkingaboutkids.com. From there, you also can find out about upcoming episodes, suggest a topic, learn more about me and my books, or submit your questions for future guests. Our theme song is by The Senators. For more of their music, go to thesenatorsmusic.com. And remember, kids are young goats and young children, and the difference is that young goats are easier to manage.